Hello and welcome. Tonight, barely 24 hours after being blamed for rising poverty, President Muhammadu Buhari accuses governors of misappropriating allocation to local government councils. Federal High Court in Abuja affirms Oladipupo Adebutu as authentic governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Ogun State, as another court also in the FCT nullifies APGA's governorship primaries in Abia State. Serving senator and governorship candidate of the Young Progressives Party in Akwa Ibom State, Bassi Akron, bags 42 years in prison over corruption charges. And on business news, Federal Inland Revenue Service grants one-off waiver on outstanding interest and penalties imposed on tax liabilities.
On sports news tonight, Atlas Lions of Morocco power into the last 16 of the FIFA World Cup for the first time in 36 years, as number 2 ranked team in the world, Belgium, crash out of the tournament.
From Abuja, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed says Nigeria is in good economic standing and far from being called a broke nation.
And in international news from London, Sam Bankman-Fried, the former boss of the collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, has denied committing fraud.
And just a day after state governors were accused of being responsible for rising poverty in the land, the governors are at the receiving end again, this time from no less a person than the nation's #1 citizen, President Muhammadu Buhari, who's accusing some governors of stealing from local government allocation. The president, who was delivering a speech at the presidential parley for members of the senior executive course 44 of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies at the State House today, underscored that personal integrity is fundamental in the operations of government. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Mozoke, reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari is holding this presidential parley with 90 participants at the 2022 Senior Executive Course 44 of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. They've just completed the 10-month course in Jos, the Plateau State capital.
Thank you. Kindly be seated.
The reform of local government structure was central at this parley, as recommendations were put forward by the participants behind closed doors. After committing his support to the nation's foremost think tank group, the president decided to speak extempore, where he bemoaned the level of corruption at the sub-national level.
The treatment of local governments. What they did, this is my personal experience. If the monies from the federal government to state government, say it's 100 billion. Let's put it 100 million. 50 million will be sent to the chairman with a letter that he will sign that he received 100 million. The governor will pocket the balance and share it with whoever he wanted. And then the chairman of the local government will see how much he must pay in salaries to help goes to development. Money for the salaries will be given and the balance will put in his pocket. This was happening. This is Nigeria. It's a terrible thing. You cannot say the person who was doing that was not educated. He was a qualified lawyer. He was experienced. Yet he participated in this type of corruption. The fundamental thing is personal integrity. May God help us.
The optimistic participants, expected to officially graduate by the weekend in Kuru, Jos, share their areas of expectations.
The report is calling on the state houses of assembly to please do their own part in approving these bills so that they can get the necessary approval required for it to pass at the National Assembly.
Now, there's been several talks about how to improve governance at the subnationals and local government levels. And the president's caution today to advance personal integrity also comes at a time the nation is in dire need of a system restructuring. So Nigerians actually now await to see how recommendations proffered today will translate into actual development in the coming days. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
From the presidential parley to party politics, the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Yusuf Datti Baba Ahmed, has been speaking on the party's economic blueprint that it intends to implement should it win the 2023 general elections next year. Mr. Baba Ahmed was speaking at a press conference in Abuja where he also explained his party's plans to tackle poverty in the country based on the recent statistics released by the National Bureau of Statistics.
There will be major policy shifts, for example, reshaping, redirecting, and savings from the scandalous fuel subsidy, the scandalous and fraudulent multi-tier foreign exchange system received, use our FX more intelligently, more honorably, stop the stealing of Nigerian crude oil, meet up our OPEC quota, begin to produce and refine oil locally in Nigeria, scrutinize the budgets, remove every element of waste. Then remember, we have been preaching and promoting procurement efficiency. And I tell you, what 1 billion naira is doing for you now, the same 1 billion naira will be able to extract anything from 2 to 5 times more value for Nigeria. Why? Neither the president, his vice, or anybody for that matter is having interest, personal or political interest, in the works of government. Money spent for Nigeria is only going to work for Nigeria.
In Lagos, southwest Nigeria, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaign organization today held a solidarity walk for the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress. The group members stormed the streets in the early hours of today, going through major areas before terminating at Ojota Motor Park. Our correspondent Dari Dou has more. We'll bring you that report a little later. But let's go to the courts now, where Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court Abuja has affirmed Oladipupo Adebutu as winner of Ogun State governorship primary of the People's Democratic Party after dismissing a suit by Mr. Jimmy Lawal for lacking reliable and credible evidence. Mr. Lawal, who contested the May 25 governorship primary election of PDP, had challenged the emergence of Mr. Adebutu, alleging that unlawful and invalid delegates list was fraudulently used by the PDP to conduct the election. Delivering judgment, Justice Ekwo described Mr. Lawal as a spoiler, having joined the PDP in March from the All Progressives Congress, APC, and participated in the governorship primary, which held in May.
The court has thrown away the very frivolous suit that was filed by Jimmy Lawal. You know, this matter traveled all the way from the Federal High Court through the Court for Appeal to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court now said, hear this matter on its merit. This matter has been heard on its merit, and it has fully been dealt with, disposed of, and given a very decent burial. Because from the first day we said that this case was dead on arrival. And we are happy that has been approved. And you'll also recall that earlier this week on Monday, the Court for Appeal also vindicated the victory of our client as the properly nominated candidate for PDP for Ogun State. So this week has been a very great one.
Elsewhere, Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court Abuja has nullified the Abia All Progressives Grand Alliance APGA governorship primary election held on May 29, 2022. The judge subsequently ordered that a fresh primary election be conducted within 14 days. Justice Nyako made the order in a judgment on a suit by Mr. Chikwe Odensi challenging the outcome of the APGA gubernatorial primary election purportedly won by Professor Greg Ibe. The judge observed that from the evidence and testimonies of witnesses, the May 29 APGA gubernatorial primary election in Abia State was flawed and marred by irregularities. Staying with legal matters, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Petroleum Upstream and governorship candidate of the Young Progressives Party in Akwa Ibom State, Senator Bassey Akpan, has been sentenced to 42 years in a correctional facility by the Federal High Court, Uyo, for corruption. Senator Akpan, who was prosecuted by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, has been taken to Ikot Ekpene Custodial Center in Akwa Ibom State to serve his term. He was accused of receiving bribes of 12 cars worth 254 million naira from an oil marketer, Olajide Omokore, during his tenure as Commissioner for Finance in Akwa Ibom State between 2010 and 2014. And we head back to our earlier story in Lagos, southwest Nigeria. The Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaign organization today held a solidarity walk for the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress.
The call time is 7 a.m. and these members of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaign organization, also known as Batco Mandate, are here to reinforce the message that their candidate is popular in his home state. Representing all local government areas in the state, the procession kicks off here at Bank Anthony Road, Ikeja. The color is orange and white, hard to miss for anyone plying that axis. They walk through the major roads in Ikeja, singing and dancing before terminating the rally at the new garage in Ojota.
You all know already that I showed you, compared with any of the presidential candidates, they are no match. Sanwo-Olu is the most challenged. Sanwo-Olu is the most challenged governor in the history of Nigeria. And I will explain that to us. I repeat that again. Sanwo-Olu is the most challenged governor in the history of Nigeria. And he was able to surmount all the challenges.
We've been out all day from 7 o'clock. You know, people from different areas, part of Lagos, they all gathered here, right from Maryland, from GRA, and every other environment in Lagos State. The main thing I know we've been able to achieve is causing a very great awareness in the mind of the people that the man Jagaban is not just anybody you can push aside.
We in Igbo, in Nigeria, in Lagos, that we are strongly behind our strategy because of the legacy he put in place. And to tell our brothers and sisters that somebody who knows the road, that is the person who follow.
As one of the frontrunners in the race, the support group hopes to continue building on the momentum of Bola Tinubu's campaign to boost the candidate's chance in the February 2023 presidential election. Dare Ido, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, former President Olusegun Obasanjo says Nigeria is yet to live up to the expectations from world leaders when it gained independence in 1960. That's in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Barely 24 hours after being blamed for rising poverty, President Muhammadu Buhari accuses the governors of misappropriating allocation to local government councils. Federal High Court in Abuja affirmed Oladipupo Adebutu as authentic governorship candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Ogun State, as another court also in the FCT nullifies APGA's governorship primaries in Abia State. Serving senator and governorship candidate of the Young Progressives Party in Akwa Ibom State, Basi Akpan, backed 42 years prison sentence over corruption charges. And Ukrainian military accuses Russia of using nuclear-capable missiles to exhaust Ukraine's air defenses. Still ahead of the general elections, the National Security Advisor, retired Major General Babagana Monguno, has warned state governors employing the use of thugs to prevent opposition from mounting campaign materials in their domains that security agencies will soon descend on them. Anchoring the ministerial briefing at the State House today, he further warned that there will be no hiding place for the perpetrators when law enforcement agencies take steps.
If you cannot restrain your thugs, the government will do that for you. And you'll be called on the carpet and you'll answer questions. We have a lot of politicians, and I'm not being specific about any politician or party. This virus has to be contained. I have given a clear warning during the press conference that any politician who engages in any activity, any unpalatable activity, the use of thugs, and I know we have a lot of thugs, political thugs, we're going to apply everything within the powers of the government. So those elements who think they can deny other people the air to breathe, the political air to breathe and reach out to the local community should have another think. And I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. These political elements should call their thugs, their capo regimes to order. They should have a nice, quiet, fireside chat with them and advise them that when the law enforcement agencies come, there will be no hiding place.
To other stories now, Nigeria is yet to realize its expectations from world leaders at independence in 1960, and the country has also not continued to maintain its leadership position on the African continent. That's according to the former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo. Chief Obasanjo stated this in Abuja at the official launch of the book, The Letter Man, written by Mr. Musikilu Mojid. The 465-page book is a compilation of letters written by former President Obasanjo.
When Nigeria became independent, it was a giant in the sun. That was the expectation. Not a giant even in Africa, a giant in the sun. That was the expectation of the world about Nigeria. Have we lived up to it? No. If we haven't, why haven't? Why haven't we? I think we probably don't appreciate what we have as a country. And I believe if we do appreciate it and make good use of it, we will do better than we are now. I believe the right lesson must be learned. We have all that we need to have. God has given us all that we need to have. That we are not doing what we should do is not God. God is not to blame. And we should blame ourselves.
Still at the launch, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Kukah, and former Aviation Minister Fani Kayode were full of eulogies for the former president, describing him as a courageous and Pan-African leader. Bishop Kukah is the reviewer of the book, while Mr. Fani Kayode recounted his days working with the former president.
There is a streak in the letters. You see his abiding passion and patriotic commitment to the principles and beliefs of the professionalism of the military. Even at what I would call a middle-level role in his life as a soldier. And this is marked by a rare show of courage, which we see. And for me, this courage is a bit strange because, as you will see, there is a stubborn streak in the quality of the letters and even the people that he addresses. And I'm saying to myself as I'm reading these letters, has the military changed? Was the military just some casual classroom in the 60s? Because how could Obasanjo write all these kind of things and get away with them?
President Obasanjo asked Akin Oshutoku and I, we had not joined government at this time. On one occasion, he said we should leave the villa, leave his sitting room, because he would not hear any talk of OPC or any talk of secession or the rights of the Southwest. He was very, very firm. And I've never forgotten that experience. That is the measure of his love for Nigeria, even though he had been through what he went through in the hands of the military administration that had locked him up and framed him up. It was an honor and a privilege to serve under you, sir. And let me tell you, Nigeria still hasn't done justice to what you have done for this country over the years. I dare say it here and now, the best cabinet that we ever had in this country was the cabinet that you formed in 2003 up until 2007.
We have more stories from our Abuja studios. Linda, it's over to you.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you. Now to other stories. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, says Nigeria is in good economic standing and is not broke. Mrs. Ahmed spoke at the 6th edition of President Buhari's scorecard organized by the Ministry of Information in Abuja. She says a total of 1.98 trillion naira was distributed as share of the 13% oil deprivation backlog paid to oil-producing states.
Under the Ministries of Information and Culture.
The 6th edition of the presentation of President Muhammadu Buhari's scorecard features the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. She goes straight to present a review of the economy under the administration since 2015, stating emphatically that the country is not broke.
I recall that we have witnessed 2 recessions during the tenure of this administration. The non-oil revenue share of funding the federal government, we've been able to succeed in turning it around. The non-oil revenue used to contribute in 30 to 35% to the federal budget. Now it is 73% financing of the federal budget, and that's very significant. That is to emphasize that the non-oil sector is growing and contributing significant, and that is what is really holding the economy now, that it is the oil sector that is lagging behind.
She goes on to give a breakdown of the disbursements of funds to the 3 tiers of government from the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee since 2015, especially the allocations to oil-producing states.
With regards to support to subnational governments, the ministry has, with the support of His Excellency the President, been able to disburse 5.03 trillion naira and an additional $3.4 billion to states by the federal government over the lifetime of this administration. And I'll come to the details of how this has happened. Each of these payments has distinct payment terms. Some of them are grants, some of them are very soft loans with very low interest rates as well as very long tenors to enable the states to manage their economies well and contribute to the growth of the nation.
On capital budget releases for the 2022 budget, the minister says that the government has released 1.7 trillion naira out of the 2.7 trillion naira.
The federal government has signed on the United Nations Sustainable Development Framework 2023 to 2027. The cooperation framework focuses on assisting Nigeria achieve developmental objectives of ensuring inclusiveness, sustainability, and accountability. At the signing of a document at the UN House in Abuja, the UN resident coordinator, Mr. Matthias Shimali, says the framework will further assist in the achievement of the federal government's plan to take 35 million Nigerians out of poverty by the year 2025. Correspondent Emperor Simon reports.
The Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Prince Clem Agba, leads the federal government team for the signing of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework 2023 to 2027. Among other things, the cooperation framework seeks to increase productivity and competitiveness in agriculture, improve access to job opportunities and quality education, as well as promote inclusiveness.
As it stands, we all need to accelerate our current efforts because Nigeria is unfortunately not on track in meeting the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. Some of this is beyond your control as a country. I don't need to mention COVID-19 and the ongoing war in the Ukraine. So we must quickly get down to the business of trying to accelerate what we do to not fall further behind.
The federal government believes the framework aligns with its National Development Plan of 2021 to 2025.
The cooperation framework, which is premised on the Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union 2063 Charter, will guide government and all stakeholders to work together in promoting sustainable and inclusive socio-economic growth and development. As you may be aware, we are currently in the 5th and final year of the current United Nations Sustainable Development Partnership Framework. And with 2023 on the near horizon, it is time to look at the next stage of our development journey.
After the speeches, the two parties signed relevant papers. A national steering committee to oversee the implementation of the framework is also inaugurated. The cooperation framework is structured around 5 thematic areas of the Sustainable Development Goals, namely prosperity, planet, people, peace, and partnership. It comprises of 1 vision, 4 priority areas, 13 outcomes, and 37 outputs. The Minister of State for Budget and National Planning says measures have been put in place to track the implementation of the framework. From the UN House in Abuja, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And following the continued detention of a student of the Federal University Dutse, Mr. Aminu Mohammed, over his tweet against the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, the National Association of Nigerian Students is planning a nationwide protest. The leadership of the association, in a statement, says the protest is to demand the release of their colleague after a failed attempt to have the issue resolved. Mr. Mohammed, a final-year student in the Department of Environmental Management and Toxicology at the Federal University Dutse Jigawa, was alleged to have made a post criticizing Mrs. Buhari. Justice Halilu Yusuf of the Federal Capital Territory High Court had remanded Aminu Mohammed at the Suleja Correctional Center in Niger State, pending the commencement of trial. Meanwhile, the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, is billed to testify against Aminu Adamu for allegedly defaming her. In a list of witnesses attached to the proof of evidence filed by the police on Wednesday night, Mrs. Buhari, the nominal complainant, is one of 5 witnesses assembled by the prosecution to establish the case against Mr. Adamu. The police says the alleged offense borders on defamation and cyber-stalking in contravention of Section 391 of the Penal Code. Away from legal issues, the registrar of the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, Mr. Olalekan Fadolapo, has announced some revised laws guiding advertising in the country. Mr. Fadolapo, who is speaking at the 77th Annual General Meeting of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria in Abuja, says the amendments include the approval for a review of advert rates by media houses with a notice of 1 month, as well as a notice of just 45 days window for all advert businesses to be conducted. Also at the meeting, the Director General of the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, Mr. Balarabe Ilela, advised broadcasters to adhere to the rules of equality, which is devoid of hatred and disunity. It's the 77th Annual General Meeting of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, and media executives from both the public and private sectors are attending. Sensitizing Nigerians on the forthcoming 2023 general elections comes to the fore, taking cognizance of the critical role the media plays in enlightening the public.
Permit me to use this opportunity to invite the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria to collaborate with NBC, as preparation having gone far to establish the Nigerian Broadcast Institute, which we hope to take off anytime soon. This way the industry can get rid of quacks and minimize the proliferation unprofessional broadcast in our airwaves.
The role of the media essentially is to inform the stakeholders timely on electoral processes, carry out voter education within the legal framework of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, giving the political parties and candidates equal airing time and space on both print and electronic media.
There is, however, a review of the Code of Ethics by the Advertising Practitioners Council as it relates to the increase in advert rates, airing and other ethical standards needed to uphold the tenets of the broadcasting profession.
The days of capping media rate is gone. Media houses are allowed to increase their rate by the new law. They don't cap CNN advert rate. Nobody cap BBC advert rate. You can wake up tomorrow, Al Jazeera said there, and this same brand plays majorly in those space. So why do they want to cap Nigerian media space?
And then the broadcasters reconvene at the same venue for the induction of some of its members into the Society of Nigerian Broadcasters. Speakers at the event note the challenges confronting the broadcast industry and also prefer solutions on how to address them.
The issue of digitization is important. It's a challenge. We cannot be doing what we say we want to do, what others are doing, when we do not have the facilities for doing them. A second challenge is, well, we don't have it now. Let me just say some of the things I can remember. Second challenge is ownership control. Is a major challenge.
The Abuja leg of the induction ceremony is then conducted with a mandate to continue to uphold the tenets of the profession. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Linda. We're off to Rivers State, where Governor Nyesom Wike has continued the commissioning of infrastructural projects in the state. This time, the governor led leaders of the state to Rumadogo 1 and 2 communities in Emoha local government area of the state to commission a road project. The 13.86-kilometer road is the first to be tarred in the community after many years. At the inauguration ceremony, the governor tasked the people to keep faith with the People's Democratic Party for a sustainable development drive.
A long distance away from Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, is the venue of the commissioning of a 13.8-kilometer road constructed by the Rivers State government in Rumodogo 1 and 2 communities in the Emoha local government area. It is the first time the people will drive on a tarred road after many years of existence, and their mood clearly explains their level of excitement. After addressing the people in his native Ikwere language, an elated Governor Nyesom Wike says despite the predictions by the opposition that he will not have resources to administer the state, he's done well as he urges the people to vote for the People's Democratic Party in return.
2023 election, and you are going to vote. You shouldn't go for a KBS. That governors in the PDP. Rawabu Similaya, Fubarablaya, Ablaya.
He challenges other governors, especially those opposed to his political philosophy, to engage in project commissioning and flag off as he does in Rivers State.
What is my crime today in the Niger Delta State? What did I do? What I said, God, I thank you for using Muhammadu Buhari to give me money to do this road I'm doing. Did I commit any offense? Did I commit any offense? If you go to church and say, God, thank you, did you do bad? And when you thank God, say, God, thank you for using you some wicked to do the road, did you do bad? There was a sitting governor. We defeated the sitting governor. Some governors were brought by their godfathers. I never had any godfather to bring me as a governor. The only godfather I had was God and the people of Rivers State.
The road is inaugurated with an expectation to improve the socioeconomic status of the people of Rumodogu 1 and 2.
And after almost 7 years of operation, the National MSME Clinics has launched a photo book chronicling Nigeria's MSME journey since the intervention started in 2015. The event, which held at the banquet hall of the State House, Abuja, included the award of certificates of commendation to officials who have contributed immensely to the MSME space. Meanwhile, in attendance was the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who was representing the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics states that a total of 41.5 million micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria contribute 47.8% to the country's gross domestic product. That's 96% of Nigeria's businesses and 84% of employment in the country. The 75 billion Naira Survival Fund and the MSME Development Fund are just a few of the many interventions set up by the Buhari administration to help MSMEs wade through the hurdles of Nigeria's economic woes, especially with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This time, the National MSME Clinics, an intervention which brings together key federal government agencies to a series of business forums organized in different cities across the country where MSMEs can interact easier with them, is chronicling its 6.5-year journey in a picture book titled Buhari Obasanjo, The MSME Journey. And that launch is happening right here at the banquet hall of the State House in Abuja. The man who runs these clinics speaks on the impact the initiative has had over the years, thanks to the support of state governors.
It seemed really impossible when we wanted to study MSME clinics. I now realized the power of partnership. We brought different agencies together. You know, the SONS, the FIRS, all the agencies that regulate MSME space. Also went to the different state governments. 30 state governors so far, across party, have hosted the national MSME clinics.
The event hosts a documentary on the spread of the MSME clinics to 30 states of the Federation, goodwill messages from the Deputy United Nations Secretary General, past and current winners of the annual MSME Awards, as well as certificates of commendation to officials who've contributed immensely to the MSME space. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, who represents the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, at the event, applauds the success of the clinics since inception.
This book goes to show us that with the right team, right attitude, and commitment to achieving our objectives, it is possible to place the interests of MSMEs at the very heart of government policy at all levels.
The photo book is launched with much fanfare, with a promise that the second edition will be released in April of 2023.
Some company news now. Axis Bank Holdings PLC Trading has held its first statutory meeting with shareholders since becoming a holding company. Shareholders at the meeting ratified the reports and state of affairs of the group, which include Axis Bank PLC, and also got an interim dividend of 20 kobo per share. According to Group Chief Executive Officer of Access Corporation, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, Access wants to be a leading institution on the continent and Africa's bridge to the world in financial payment solution.
Playing by the rules and requirements of the Company and Allied Matters Act 2022, Access Holdings PLC, trading under Access Corporation, has called its shareholders to the first statutory meeting.
A statutory meeting of the shareholders of Access Holdings PLC, trading as Access Corporation.
The shareholders are meant to ratify the processes after the notices have been read, essentially an exercise that ensures that both management and shareholders are still traveling together.
Our commitment.
When we said we're going to set up a holding company, or we're going to evolve into a holding company, there were several reasons. And the first was that, in line with what is happening in the Western world and best practice, as you find the banking subsidiary growing to 15 to 16 to 20 countries, etc., you need a holding company that will provide additional oversight over the entire banking institution. No one managing director can say he's responsible for 22 countries, or for 50 countries, or for 100 countries. You can go and see how Citibank has been modeled.
We're going to vote on the adoption of the corporation statutory reports by simple majority on show of hands. Will someone please second this motion? The lady at the back.
I rise to second that motion.
Thank you very much.
According to management, Access Bank PLC, the banking group, joins other verticals to become members of Access Corporation with some sterling international incursions and strategies.
We're trying to create an institution that will be truly seen as global, but coming out of Africa. And so we're spreading to countries that you have inflation rates lower than that of Africa, because what you tend to see is that if you operate in countries that have high inflation rates, all right, over time, the impact of devaluation can destroy your capital. So in the course of last year, all right, we had raised capital by way of alternative tier 1 capital, which is typically what you see in developed markets, all right, and strengthened our balance sheets. Now, what we've also done is that we want to be seen as that institution that technically has replaced some of the Western banks that are leaving the continent as far as payments is concerned. So the idea is that 1 out of every 3 payments anybody is making from anywhere in the world into Africa will be settling on Access Bank's platform.
In keeping with the 20-year tradition and based on the half-year performance, an interim dividend of 20 kobo is paid to shareholders, with a full-year dividend to be paid at the end of 2022 financial year.
Business News is next. Here's Will Ibong.
Thanks, Millicent. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, says it has approved a one-off waiver of all outstanding interest and penalties imposed on liabilities by Tax Pro Max until December the 31st this year. The tax agency, who made this known in a statement, explains that it granted the one-off waiver following complaints from taxpayers who said additional interest and penalties were imposed on them while generating payment reference numbers on liabilities. Meanwhile, the FIRS adds that the Tax Pro Max has enhanced the ease of paying taxes in Nigeria and reduced the cost of tax compliance for taxpayers. Now, a total of 7.04 billion Chinese yuan, an equivalent of $995.6 million, has been auctioned through the bilateral currency swap agreements between the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, and the People's Bank of China from 2018 to June 2022. This is contained in the CBN's 2022 Financial Markets Half-Year Activity Report released today. In 2018, the CBN had signed a bilateral currency swap agreement with China to facilitate trade using the naira for the yuan. This in a bid to reduce pressure on the country's forex reserves. The 3-year deal was due to end in 2021 but was renewed in April last year. About 6 months after Aero Contractors, Nigeria's oldest aviation company, suspended its scheduled services, the airline has announced it will resume operations on Monday, December the 5th. The airline is returning to service after having satisfied regulatory requirements from the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authorities and a change in management. The airline says it will be operating with Boeing 737 and Dash 8, servicing 10 destinations. Now to the equities market, where stocks reversed gains made in yesterday's trading session as investors took profit in MTN Nigeria. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the stock market report. Well, we have a flattish negative close today. First trading day in December, we're down 0.01%. Not a convincing move to the downside today. 47,656 level, still holding. Market cap 25.95 trillion. Now, let's look at the activity chart now. We see it's just deals in the red, 3,073 deals. Value, more value today of stocks traded to 2.84 billion. I received volume there, 172 million units traded. Let's look at the sectoral performance, and we see it again back to back. The banking sector up again, thanks to 4 out of the 5 figures today is up 2.16%, following yesterday's bullish move there. Consumer goods also up 0.77%. And we see the market breadth is stale today, 11 gainers against 11 decline as well. Fingers crossed for a Santa rally this month. We're looking out for that. And that's a stock market report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you.
And that's it on business news. It's back to Millicent for the rest of the news.
Thanks, Will. Into some international news. The Ukrainian military says Russia is now using nuclear-capable missiles with non-explosive warheads to exhaust Ukraine's air defenses. Ukrainian military experts say Russia may have significantly depleted its vast missile arsenal after carrying out a wave of massive strikes on critical Ukrainian infrastructure and is now resorting to using blunt projectiles to cause devastation. Saman Pusi has other news on the foreign scene and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Sam Bankman-Fried, the former boss of the collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX, has denied committing fraud. Making his first public appearance since the collapse, the man, once hailed as the king of crypto, told the New York Times he had had a bad month and had almost no money left. FTX fell apart last month, having once been valued at $32 billion. Many investors have not been able to withdraw their funds from the now bankrupt global exchange. Mr. Bankman-Fried denied having moved any personal money out of FTX himself, saying he now has close to nothing.
There is some potential knock-on effects in what we will call the traditional financial space, but nothing that should arise to the level of systemic problems. Now, that's what we know now. It's possible that as the dominoes start falling in the future, that it might metastasize into something larger, but it doesn't look like that for the moment.
China has signaled a shift in its COVID stance as it moves to ease some virus restrictions despite high daily case numbers. Dozens of districts in Shanghai and Guangzhou, cities that have seen rising cases, were released from lockdown measures. The country's vice premier also announced that the country was facing a new situation. It comes as China is seeing mass protests against its zero COVID policy. The unrest was triggered by a fire in a high-rise block in the western Xinjiang region that killed 10 people last week. Many Chinese believe long-running COVID restrictions in the city contributed to the deaths, although authorities deny this. A landslide on a motorway in southern Brazil has killed at least 2 people and left dozens missing. A torrent of mud fell onto a highway in the state of Parana, hitting more than 21 vehicles. Rescue workers at the scene said bad weather and the remote location were complicating the search effort. Firefighters are using a thermal camera to locate possible survivors. Up to 30 people are thought to still be missing. Donald Trump's tax returns have been handed over to a committee of the US House of Representatives after the former president lost a long legal battle to keep them sealed.
In order to make America great and glorious again.
The Treasury Department said it had complied with a Supreme Court order that the records should be given to a panel in the Democrat-controlled House. Mr. Trump is yet to comment, but has previously denied any wrongdoing. He declined to release the documents during his 2016 presidential run or subsequently, breaking a decades-old presidential custom. Ian Blackford is to stand down as the leader of the Scottish National Party group at Westminster.
The Prime Minister has every right to oppose independence. He has no right to deny democracy to the people of Scotland.
Mr. Blackford said he believed it was time for fresh leadership after 5 years in the role. Well known for his weekly appearances at Prime Minister's Questions, where he often attacked the government, he said he would formally stand down at the group's annual general meeting next week. Britain's Prince and Princess of Wales have been met with chants of USA, USA as they attended a basketball game. William and Kate were sitting courtside at the game in Boston's TD Garden area. The royals smiled and waved as they were broadcast on the big screen. The Prince and Princess of Wales were in Boston, their first visit to the US in 8 years, to attend an awards ceremony for the Earthshot Environmental Prize, which the Prince set up. They were also expected to meet President Biden. And festive crowds cheered as the New York Rockefeller Center's Christmas tree was lit up. Social media video shows onlookers counting down before the annual tree lighting took place. The tradition started in December 1933, when the first Rockefeller Center tree lighting ceremony took place. This year's tree is a Norway spruce and boasts 50,000 multicolored LED lights and a three-dimensional Swarovski star. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The Atlas Lions of Morocco have parred into the last 16 of the FIFA World Cup for the first time in 36 years with a 2-1 victory over Canada. Goals from Hakim Ziyech and Nusif En-Nesri ensured the North Africans finished top of Group F. But Canada's defeat, meanwhile, capped a disappointing World Cup for the CONCACAF side, who depart after losing all 3 of their group games on their long-awaited return to the finals. Our former champions Germany have crashed out on the group stage of this year's World Cup for the second consecutive time. But the Germans defeated Costa Rica 4-2 in the final Group E game of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, but exited the tournament. Japan progressed to the last 16 after beating Spain 2-1 to finish top of the group, while the Spaniards finished in second place to book their place in the last 16. And that's a wrap on Sports News. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.
And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari has accused state governors of misappropriating funds allocated to local government councils. The president was speaking at the presidential parley for members of the senior executive, course 44 of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Abuja. The allegation comes barely 24 hours after the Minister of State for Budget also blamed the governors for rising poverty levels in the country. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good night and stay safe.